and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't understand what
agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
8 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Friday, July 18th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Is the sun rising in Colorado? Yes, then there's another lawsuit against the state over its restrictions on religion. This one has to do with House Bill 1312. Yes, that big one, the one that passed through, that we all said was unconstitutional, that now lumps in gender identity with discrimination and allows the Civil Rights Commission here in Colorado to basically Jack Phillips any business that doesn't abide by someone's chosen gender identity. Well, one of those businesses is this little Christian bookstore down in Colorado Springs that's now suing the state. Born Again Used Books of Colorado Springs, challenging that state law, saying it violates religious beliefs. We're going to talk with Alliance Defending Freedom coming up after news and comment with Blake Olson. Then Billy and I are going to talk NPR, PBS. Man, what a day to be a conservative. Funding's being clawed back from NPR, PBS. Stephen Colbert is wrapping up the show because he's not funny anymore. There was a time, Bill, where Stephen Colbert was like the biggest news piece, entertainment guy on Capitol Hill. And he used to do these things called Better Know a District. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Those little things with Jon Stewart. I always felt like he played second fiddle to John and never could really become the big name himself.
Well, I think some of it is because I think Colbert is incredibly talented, and I think he's really good at what he does. I think part of the issue, he was really good as the reporter on The Daily Show.
Yes.
But separated from Jon Stewart, I think they are too similar, where I think John Oliver has been able to brand himself differently. While it's similar to what The Daily Show does, Oliver has a different presentation, and I think Colbert's is too similar to Stewart. I think, for me, the zenith of Stephen Colbert is when he was pretending to be Bill O'Reilly, the Colbert Report. That to me that's the zenith of his creativity. I think that's fair. And because that's where he's able to be political and poke fun while also not being political and not poking fun. So there's a way, and I think that was kind of the best of what he was doing. And he's okay on the late night gig. And I think you're right, though, that there is a critique that there is too much of the one-sided jabs. It's too much from the left going to the right in late night talk right now. The late night hosts should be able to shoot at both sides, and they better. And that's what Johnny Carson did.
Do they need to? I don't think Johnny Carson shot at anybody.
Yeah, he did. He did take some political shots. They weren't overt as they are now. But again, think about how our politics is so overt now versus back when Johnny Carson was on. Johnny Carson did, but he would take some shots at both sides, but he didn't have the time in his monologue devoted to politics that we see across late night right now. It has permeated at a level, and I think that it's off-putting because the 100%. The conversation should be things like, it should be the Coldplay thing. It should be the lifestyle stuff. I think that the late night talk show hosts have morphed into radio talk show hosts doing late night shows rather than being radio DJs doing late night talk show hosts.
Explain that more.
What I mean by that is that in order to be, when we're here on the radio and we turn on the microphone, if you're living in the talk show host world, it's about politics and how politics impacts you. If you're living in the DJ world, the last thing you talk about is politics. And if you do, it has to be with an overarching umbrella. You don't necessarily pick sides, but you throw rocks at both, but you don't necessarily take an opinion. That's how you have to be a music DJ. Music DJs talk about what's going on in your life and those pain points that are outside of politics, because politics is so personal. You also avoid lots of religion talk inside of being a radio DJ, unless you're in a certain area of the country or on a certain kind of music station.
K-Love, for instance.
Yep, exactly. Yep. Or if you're sitting down there and you're in the Bible Belt, there are certain ways. When I would have breaks on Westwood 1 and I knew that I was coming into Mississippi or I'm in Arkansas, there are times I would lean into faith. There were times that I would lean into these faith stories. When I'm doing affiliates in Massachusetts or somewhere else, I wouldn't. I would leave those aside. So, and that's kind of the rule. And I think that the late night talk show hosts decided to become too political. But again, politics is driving so much of what we're doing. I think they would have found success. I mean, I remember when David Letterman used to throw things off the roof of the building.
Yes,
that
exactly.
kind of thing. That kind of thing is that Letterman should be the release from politics, not a reinforcement of politics.
I agree with that. Have you ever seen those guys in person? Did you ever sit in the studio?
No, I never have. How about you?
So I've done it twice.
Really?
Jay Leno
share.
and Conan O'Brien.
Okay.
Very different experiences.
Okay, tell me why. Yeah.
So Jay Leno was very corporate. There was a warm-up guy that came out and tried to.
Yeah.
So what happens is you want the audience almost slap happy.
Yes.
When the show starts, so they laugh a lot, and then that comes through on the television, and then the audience
because you're starting with the monologue, and the monologue has to get response. You can't.
Correct.
It's not like at the concert. Nobody, you go crazy when the star comes out on the stage at the beginning of the concert, but you don't lose your mind for the first two songs. But you've got to be able to get people up, and as a concert, you got to have people dancing and singing along with the song,
and happy, and all
you've got to
that.
get them ready for that. Yeah.
Yep. And these shows are recorded in the daytime and then go at night, so everything is pre-recorded. They're not actually live. Conan O'Brien, on the other hand, was a master.
Really? Tell me why. What was he doing?
Audience engagement. Yeah. So dude comes out to Hunka Hunka Burnin' Love.
Wait, so he
by
doesn't have another
Elvis
comic
Presley.
or anything else? He's his own warm-up.
He's his own warm-up.
Oh, okay.
Tons of energy. I mean, he's pulling people up into the aisle, dancing back and forth with them. I mean, he's having fun. He's high-fiving.
Yeah.
The whole crowd is just like peak. And then, boom, the show launches. And it was so much fun.
See,
it was great.
I always thought that Conan O'Brien would be a fantastic boss. I'm not saying that he would be the best boss ever. There were going to be problems, of course. You'd have some things. But I always thought that inside a working environment, he'd be amazing. That'd be really cool.
He seemed to struggle with this like external belief that he was always second rate, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like he wasn't second rate.
No.
He was amazing, but he always believed he was second rate. And that played itself out because you remember when he went over to TBS, I think it was, and he was just like, oh, I'm a second rate night show guy. I never made it.
Yeah.
And
well, because they gave him the show and they yanked it from him.
Yeah,
they
that's
gave him the Tonight Show and then they yanked it from him.
Yes, that's right.
So I mean, that's kind of the feeling as well. And again, he comes out of the Simpsons world, and he is a very, very accomplished writer. But it's the writer for the Simpsons, and you're like, oh, you're a writer for the Simpsons. You're not Homer's voice. Oh, you're not Bart's voice. Oh, you're not a real star. You just wrote the stuff the funny people said. You're like, wait. They're not funny without me. But that's kind of the idea is he had to step from behind the curtain in front of the curtain. And that's a difficult thing to do and have credibility. And he's always going to feel that way. And he did present himself. And although I do think he leaned into the second fiddle thing because it was a positioning statement. It's like, okay, I don't have to achieve as high as everybody else as well. Right. But then it became a self-fulfilling prophecy where he just felt he had to be second. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Jay Leno, I've always had a tremendous amount of respect for, in part because of his commitment to his wife.
Yeah.
Right, and takes care of her. She's got a degenerative disease of some capacity, maybe Parkinson's or something. But he's always there to care for her, which I respect. But then two, you can go watch him at a comedy club in L.A. He's so committed to the craft of comedy, which I grew up with a dad that was a stand-up comedian and a brother's a stand-up comedian. I think they're the smartest people in the entire world are stand-up comedians because of their ability to build a show. Imagine walking in front of people, cold, no music, and to be able to take them on a journey
and say, "Pay attention to me,"
through a comedic set, and connect with people and make them feel good about their lives and all that. That is so hard to do.
Oh, yeah.
And then when you have an audience that responds back and you can be that quick, I have so much respect for that. And for Jay to commit to doing that this late in his life, still showing up, still trying to refine. It's always why I found Comedians and Cards Getting Coffee one of the most fascinating shows.
Oh, yeah.
Because you see brilliant people talk about the art of comedy from a perspective of like behind the scenes almost.
Yeah, and how it comes in. And what I appreciate is that Jay Leno continues the grind. The idea of always coming up with new material and always looking for new things to tell and always trying to find new stories to tell and new reasons why this is relevant. Yeah, and that is hard to do because it's... Okay, and I'm going to go back to the music world. There are a lot of bands out there where their first album hits and does really well, and the second album is a failure because they've taken years from clubs, from honky-tonks, from festivals, from, state fairs, finding the songs and the presentation that will resonate with the audience. They polish that, and then they go ahead and present it. They get a record deal. They go out there, and everything works. Now they have to do that again, but without all of the testing. They don't have the time nor the ability to test all of this stuff, and you've got to set it out. And now you have the record company talking in your ear about what this should be for the follow-up as well. So now you're not even creating it yourself independently. So that's very hard, and I find it very difficult many times for bands to follow up and have that second album. Sometimes bands do it the opposite. And the first album sucks, and the second album's amazing because they figured it out. But it's that grind. It's not being able to get out, and Leno does. He gets out in front of the audience. He does the grind. He sees what they respond to, and sometimes things work. Sometimes they don't. But you got to appreciate the person that goes out there and continues to do it.
You know who does that great? Blake Olson.
Yes.
Now it's time for news and comment with the man who grinds it out, Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Hey, good morning. TGIF 71 and sunny in Denver, expecting a high of 90 today. This portion of the news sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story.
I mean, on X, all you hear about is the Epstein files. But how about out in the real public? Republicans who said the top issue was Epstein case. The answer is one.
Harry Anton, 47, calling for AG Pam Bondi to release pertinent grand jury testimony in the Epstein case. Trump posted on Truth Social last night that he directed her to produce the testimony subject to court approval. Bondi later posted that she would move the court today to unseal the transcripts. DJT also said he's going to sue Rupert Murdoch and the Wall Street Journal for the hatchet job. Total garbage.
One, and not 1%. One responded. This is a great little finding that Ariel Edwards-Levy, who of course is part of our polling unit, found. Just one single Republican said that the nation's top problem is in fact the Epstein case. Not much of a surprise that therefore Donald Trump's approval rating has not suffered with Republicans because of the Epstein case, because the bottom line is most Americans say it's not high up on their priority.
And this morning, 47 also posting quote, I absolutely love that Stephen Colbert got fired. His talent was even less than his ratings. I hear Jimmy Kimmel is next. Colbert announced it last night.
I found out just last night. Next year will be our last season. The network will be ending The Late Show in May. And yeah, I share your feelings.
And his big guest last night, greaseball Adam Schiff. That is amazing. Man, you announce that, and then you have Adam Schiff come on the show. Wow. House lawmakers passing a package that includes $9 billion in DOGE spending cuts. GOP members voted along party lines Thursday to approve funding cuts that included NPR. The bill now heads to DJT's desk for his signature. The TSA opening 2 new airport security lanes. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said Thursday that there will be new lanes exclusively for military members and their families called the Honor Lane. And another new screening lane will be for families traveling with young children. Love that idea. The daughter of murder suspect Dennis James Craig says her father ordered her to create fake evidence following her mother's death. Annabelle Craig testified Thursday in the trial of her father. Craig was Billy's dentist and Stephen Tubbs' dentist, and Stephen with the guys this morning.
That's what the defense is trying to say. It was a love-filled marriage with a flawed husband. But suffice it to say, this has been one of the most bizarre cases that I've certainly been a part of, that I've followed, and I just don't know what is going to be. We always wondered what the defense was going to be, and if one of the defenses is, yeah, she wanted to poison herself, and she's this sick, and she was playing chicken or whatever for years and years, and now are we all supposed to believe she killed herself?
Hey, Stefan is in for John Caldera tomorrow morning from 7 to 9. It's going to be a great show, followed by Pete the Legend. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu apologizing for an attack on the only Catholic church in Gaza. The strike was apparently made by a tank, killing 3 people and drawing a phone call and criticism from President Trump. Netanyahu's office issued the apology Thursday, saying that every innocent life lost is a tragedy. All right. Barry was on his wife's podcast a few days ago. So many things here.
That's one of the things that I think a lot of times boys need is not just exposure to one guy.
Mm-hmm. One dad.
No matter how good the dad
is. He can't be everything.
He can't be everything.
I think they got the script. They're repeating each other.
And that boy may need somebody to give the boy some perspective on the dad.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
One of the most valuable things I learned as a guy was I had a gay professor in college at a time when openly gay folks still weren't out of line, who became one of my favorite professors and was a great guy and would call me out when I started saying stuff that was ignorant.
All the time.
You need that to show empathy and kindness. And by the way, you need that person in your friend group so that if you then have a boy who's gay or non-binary or what have you, they have somebody that they can go, okay, I'm not alone in this.
Yeah.
Right? So
really? Oh, you can't do that without those guys?
No.
God. Now let me ask some. He was talking about you just don't need a dad. Hey, I love it. I love having uncles, coaches, all that.
Correct.
But you need a dad, if possible. That's the ideal situation. If not, you do the best you can. So do you think he was talking about Frank Marshall Davis right there? I do.
I don't know who Frank Marshall Davis is.
So Frank Marshall Davis, this is what happens when you listen to Peter Boyles for a long time. Frank Marshall Davis allegedly is his actual dad, who he was dropped off at his house during his formidable years in Hawaii all the time, maybe 4 or 5 days a week. And
he would say that? Wow.
Well, he mentioned Frank Marshall Davis in his book. So before he became president, Obama did. And I think most of us believe that's his dad, his biological dad, who was a communist in Chicago. Joel Gilbert, watch that video and read that book and that documentary. And I think that's what he was talking about right there, because it was like he had 3 different dads. But Pete he went in deep on that 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 16 years ago. Oh, man, I love it. What a podcast that thing is. Oh, wow.
This is helping Republicans.
Yes, absolutely. More of that all of the time. British Open, American Brian Harmon leads the pack at 6 under as they get ready for the third round. Manana. 67 in Golden, 69 in Parker, 71 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue. Blake Olson, News Talk, 710 KNUS.
Temperatures will stay in the 80s today. There will be a few widely scattered showers and thunderstorms. Not as many as the last day or two, but a few will pop up. Low to mid-60s for lows. Back to the lower 90s Friday. Afternoon and evening thunderstorms. A good chance of thunderstorms. Low 90s Saturday. Few thunderstorms. Low 90s Sunday. Weather is a service of L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. For quick, trustworthy, and dependable service, call L&L Heating and Air Conditioning at 720-851-1691. Visit them online at bestdenverhvac.com. You'll be comfortable with L&L. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Well, if the sun is shining in Colorado, which it does just about 365 days a year, there's lawsuits against the state for its infringement on religious freedom. If you remember Jack Phillips, twice. You have Lori Smith at 303 Creative. You have another case coming out of Colorado Springs with regards to counseling. You had Idra Haji, which ADF was able to get a good settlement out of that one, but it's just constant. It's constant. And when we were down at the state capitol fighting against House Bill 1312, it's because we knew this was a violation of free speech. You were going to compel people in the state of Colorado to have to use chosen pronouns based upon a gender identity that can be so fluid that it changes in mid-conversation. And then you were going to drag these businesses before the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, which is so terrible that it was slapped down by name by the U.S. Supreme Court. Lo and behold, here's another case. State of Colorado. God bless the people at Alliance Defending Freedom, because they're the only ones that are keeping Colorado from completely collapsing into total chaos. But they're winning these cases because they're on the side of the Constitution. Christian bookstore now suing Colorado for trying to silence its views on biological reality. ADF attorneys representing born-again used books in Colorado Springs are now challenging that law, House Bill 1312, a state law that violates religious beliefs and the First Amendment. To give us some insight on this, Hal Frampton, Senior Counsel and Director of the Center of Conscience Initiatives for Alliance Defending Freedoms. Hal, thank you so much for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
So let's dive into an overview of this case. What's it all about?
Sure. Well, as you were saying, House Bill 1312 requires any business open to the public, like our client, Born Again Used Books, to use someone's, what they call their chosen form of address, pronouns, titles, whatever. Born Again Used Books is a Christian bookstore. They're not able to use any kind of language that doesn't accord with biological reality, and they know that this law now places them in its crosshairs. So they are taking action and filing a lawsuit to try to get the court to step in and say, no, Colorado cannot come after them for simply adhering to their policy of speaking in accordance with biological reality.
That's Hal Frampton. Hal's the senior counsel for the director of the Center for Conscience Initiatives at Alliance Defending Freedom. Now, Hal, I sat through a lot of this testimony. I was down at the Colorado State Capitol when this bill was passed. And the argument from the proponents of this law is that there's harassment taking place of the transgender community. And look, if someone wants to identify as a girl, there might be biologically a boy, but they want to identify as a girl. What's so wrong with identifying them as a girl? And if a business refuses, says, no, I am not going to do that, aren't they just harassing their customers? And shouldn't the state step in to protect them? Your response, sir?
Born Again Used Books serves everybody. They are happy to have customers from every walk of life come into their store. They're happy to speak with them. They're happy for them to buy their products. They're happy to talk with them about their products. But what they won't do is speak something that they think is not true. It's essentially forcing the business to say something, to use language that they don't agree with and that they don't think is in accordance with biblical truth. And that's why we have a First Amendment, because Americans can disagree without forcing each other to say certain things. That's the essence of living in a free country.
So, Hal, what's the response been so far since you released this? Have you heard from the state? What's going to be the process moving forward? How long could this take?
Well, we don't know yet. We've not heard anything from the state. We will be serving them with the lawsuit very shortly. We have asked for a preliminary injunction, which is where the court steps in even before the case is resolved and says, at least on a preliminary basis, this business is protected from having to say things they don't agree with during the course of the litigation. And we're hoping that will happen quickly, but courts are courts, and we'll see what the timeline ends up being.
Colorado is no stranger to these types of lawsuits, and they're willing to take it all the way, as we've seen now on a third case heading to the U.S. Supreme Court from Colorado with regards to religious freedom and LGBTQ. And what I found interesting in Colorado, Hal, is that Colorado Springs at one point was the centerpiece of the evangelical movement. I mean, like the global centerpiece of the evangelical movement. And in the 90s, early 2000s, it changed when a group of four, primarily motivated by LGBTQ issues, Jared Polis, Tim Gill, Pat Stryker, and others, decided to really invest a lot of money in turning the state against, I would say, traditional Christian values towards embracing LGBTQ. We have one of America's first gay governors, Jared Polis. And ever since then, it's been this battle. And it's been a battle that has now gone to the U.S. Supreme Court 3 times. That doesn't even include Idra Haji. It doesn't include the lawsuits with regards to Christian preschools and whether or not they can participate in state funding. I mean, this is the centerpiece of a battle between the LGBTQ and the evangelical world. But I think the argument that's been made, what I've heard from you today, Hal, is that, look, this isn't about a business not wanting to serve LGBTQ people in the same way that Jack Phillips was happy to sell you a brownie no matter who you were. But with regards to forcing evangelicals, forcing Roman Catholics, forcing people of faith to abide by this LGBTQ regime, we're now having to sue just to be able to freely practice our faith and not be compelled to do something that violates our own beliefs. Is that right?
That's right. The case is about, and same with 303 Creative, same with Masterpiece Cake Shop. This case is about compelled speech. It is not about serving. They will serve anyone. They're happy to serve anyone. They are happy to have a civil conversation with anyone who disagrees with them and to tell them about their views on the love of Jesus Christ and biological reality. And they are happy to hear other people's views. They love that. People who run bookstores love having conversations. That's why you open one. But what they can't do, and what the state is trying to do, is to compel them to use particular language and to say things that they think are not true, and that violates the First Amendment.
That's Hal Frampton, senior counsel with Alliance Defending Freedom, joining Jeff and Bill live. We're talking about House Bill 1312 and a recent lawsuit that's been filed against the state from a Christian bookstore in Colorado Springs, talking about the fact they feel it's compelled speech. Now, I've got issues with House Bill 1312. I'm not necessarily defending it. I've got issues on both sides. But where I want to push a little bit, Mr. Frampton, is the business then compelling or forcing their beliefs on the customer by saying, when you walk through these doors, this is how we're going to deal with you, address you? Are they doing the same thing they are complaining the state is doing to them? Your opinion?
Absolutely not. They are not compelling their customer speech, and they are simply asking that the state not compel theirs. People should be able to have a conversation and disagree without the state stepping in and picking sides.
Well, aren't they compelling the individual that might be trans to choose the gender or pronoun or name they want, not what the individual wants? Aren't they making that choice for the customer, not the customer making the choice?
Absolutely not. The
Why
customer is free to use whatever language they want. The customer is free to engage with them in whatever way they want. What the customer can't do and what the state can't do is tell Born Again Used Books how it has to speak.
So I think that argument would make sense, Bill, if what was happening is if a trans person goes into this bookstore and says they're a biological male, they identify as a woman, and they say, I want to be addressed as a woman, and the bookstore goes, we're not going to sell you a book unless you identify as a man, right? Like it has to be connected to a service, right?
Well, as I said, the bookstore serves absolutely everyone.
Right. And they're not saying to the trans person, we're not going to sell you a book until you identify as a male.
Oh yeah, I understand that. And the idea for me is that the law doesn't say that the business is compelled to or forced to sell this person the product or service or anything else defined. This is about identifying them. That's why I'm talking about the issue of identification. And the issue is that I would assume that Christian bookstore, if a current client got married and she was a woman and took her husband's name, they would refer to her as the other last name. If there was someone that may be in that community that is Muslim, that is converted to Muslim and has changed their name as many Muslim converts do, but still has Christian friends, comes in as a customer, I would imagine that business would use the new person's preferred name. I find it interesting and unusual that it is in this manner that we choose to not honor the individual's request. That's what I find interesting in this. It's not necessarily the issue of doing business, and I support Jack Phillips and have been a long supporter of him, but that's where I find this intellectual conundrum of the idea that we're okay with doing it in certain areas, but in this one, because I dislike it, I'm not going to. It seems petty at times to me. But Hal Frampton, Senior Counsel of the Alliance Defending Freedom, one question I've got for the Christian bookstore, how are they going to check? How do they know if the person walking through that door is using pronouns that aren't of their biological sex? What procedures, processes do they have in place to make sure they're doing the right thing?
They're not checking people at the door. They're not asking them questions. But the Colorado's law essentially says if a person comes in and asks to be addressed in a certain way, says, "Hey, I'm transgender. I'm born male, but I identify as female. I need you to use female pronouns." Then they need to have the freedom to be able to say, "We're not able to comply with that request because of our religious beliefs."
Yeah, I see that, and I agree with that. How that there's a problem in the law because I agree. I agree on the idea of the compelled speech, and I also think that this law has created a problem that doesn't exist because in the real world, where you, myself, Jeff, and our listeners live, very rarely does any individual who is either straight, gay, or trans announce that when entering a business. In my entire course of my life, I don't think I can point to more than one instance of someone walking into a place of business and going, "Yo, I'm this type of person." And so what I think the problem of the law is if we have an individual that is walking into the business and saying, "Hi, I'm trans. Everybody, you got to use this name for me." That, to me, is a person that is trying to create an issue, not trying to live their life. It gets to the idea of Autumn Scardina, who's here locally, who went to Jack Phillips and, in my opinion, specifically asked him to make a cake in order to trap him into a lawsuit. So while I think this law has a real big problem, I do think it's trying to solve a problem that doesn't necessarily exist because, in my experience, that's not the behavior of the trans community overall. There are outliers that are looking for the fight, but that's really my pushback on the whole issue.
Well, and let me just say real quick, one of the things that I find particularly crazy about the law is that simply the bookstore publishing its policy that it won't use pronouns violates the law. That in and of itself is a completed violation of the law.
Yeah, that's
and
stupid.
That is where it just gets to be a huge free speech problem.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I would stand right next to you and say, yes, that is an absolute free speech problem. And I would still support the Christian bookstore. They absolutely can have that. They should be able to do that. And I would tell the person that is trans that goes in and announces that they are trans walking in the Christian bookstore, what in the hell are you doing? Because why is that the filter that we have to interact with you on?
It gets to the point of these laws are often passed under the guise of being a shield.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So we're going to protect the trans community. I listen to this testimony all day. We're going to protect the trans community against this harassment that takes place. And I understand you don't want harassment. If you have a coworker that's just harassing you all the time over transgenderism, yeah, that should be an HR issue. And it falls under the guise of harassment to begin with. But then what happens, and we've seen it over and over again in the state of Colorado, these laws become a sword. So passed as a shield, they become a sword. You get people like Autumn Scardina who are just chasing Jack Phillips down and trying to force a lawsuit to send a message that if you're a Christian business owner, the state of Colorado is going to prosecute you into the ground. And Jack's dealt with this for now well over a decade. Even had to sue John Hickenlooper in his own personal capacity to knock it off. And so in my mind, it goes back to this notion of, you want to look at tolerance? The LGBT community, when in total control in the state of Colorado with regards to our government, has been the least tolerant group of people to ever run the state government.
There's a lot of truth in what Jeff is saying there. Now, Hal Frampton, Senior Counsel with the Alliance Defending Freedom, I want to have your reaction to what Jeff just said. Do you think, just in your own personal opinion, doesn't have to be representing Alliance Defending Freedom, but in Hal Frampton's own personal opinion, do you feel laws that are crafted similar to 1312 here in the state of Colorado are done in order to create the potential of lawsuits rather than to protect people? Is this the idea that now it becomes a weapon for a community to go out there and to punish people they don't think are towing their particular political line? Your opinion?
Well, I don't want to speculate on people's motivations, but I will say that the law itself is crafted in a particularly problematic way when it goes and tells a business that they can't simply publish a policy saying we will not use pronouns or language that's inconsistent with violation, and that publication is itself a completed violation. At best, that's just highly misguided and not respecting the free speech and religious liberty rights of Coloradans.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot you said there.
For those of us in Colorado, it's tough right now with a complete Marxist control, leftist control of our state government, to where Christians again and again and again are having to sue simply just for the right to be able to live out their own faith quietly with their own businesses that they run. Thank God there is Alliance Defending Freedom, great organization. Go to adflegal.org. Donate to them today, because without them, this state would be even worse off than it is. Continue to support the great attorneys working at Alliance Defending Freedom by going to adflegal.org, adflegal.org. It's one of the best uses of money you can in the state, especially if you're a person of faith who just wants to be able to practice your faith. Hal Frampton, great work. Appreciate your time today, sir.
Yeah, thanks for the time, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen.
We'll continue to track this case as well as the other cases that are coming from the state over and over again. But I'll say this. I said it with Hal, and Hal's an attorney. He's not going to get into it the same way I will. Look at this place. Look at how intolerant Colorado has become under LGBTQ leadership. We had how many lawsuits did we have reach the U.S. Supreme Court when evangelicals were in control and had to sue the state in order to have gay marriage? One. It was Romer. One case. We are now on our third U.S. Supreme Court case with all of these other cases. Idra Haji and this one that haven't even gotten there yet. I think the evidence is clear. Colorado is far more intolerant with LGBTQ leadership than it ever was with Christian leadership. Prove me wrong. 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
Wake up, Denver. There's no better place to start your morning than IHOP, where the pancakes are fluffy, the coffee is hot, and the smiles are endless. Wednesday, August 27th, join Jeff and Bill as they broadcast their show live from IHOP at 1595 South Colorado Boulevard in Denver. You're officially invited to be part of the excitement. Come grab your favorite breakfast and watch the Jeff and Bill Show in action from 6 to 10 a.m. Don't forget to try the special Jeff and Bill breakfast. Pancakes, any style eggs, and crispy bacon, all for just $7.10. It's a deal as good as their hot takes. All they need is you. Bring your appetite, bring your friends, and kick off your day with great food and great conversation. See you Wednesday, August 27th at IHOP.
Man, text messages hot after that interview. The state of Colorado being sued once again for religious freedom purposes. A Christian bookstore, I keep saying store, Christian bookstore, lies defending freedom, representing Christian bookstore titled Born Again Used Books, challenging that law, House Bill 1312, for violating their religious beliefs. As they pointed out, they can't even publish a store policy that we refer to people based upon their biological pronouns, not their chosen gender identity, but their biological pronouns. It's what we do as Christians. We don't separate it out. Your gender can't exist outside of your biology, separate from it. They're uniquely linked. It's been that way since Genesis, and we're going to run our business that way. Now, why this is different than a church is because this is a place of public accommodation. So the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, that wonderful entity that referred to Jack Phillips as a Nazi for not wanting to bake a cake with a message he disagreed with, this is the entity that can now be used as a sword. And so you can go around to all these Christian businesses and go, because you don't abide by my gender identity, I'm going to drag you before the Colorado Civil Rights Commission. And I raised the question, is Colorado less tolerant under LGBTQ leadership? I think it is. Now, I want to give credit where credit's due. What Tim Gill, Jared Pullis, and Pat Stryker, and Rhett Bridges, I think is his name, is the other guy, they're detailed in the book, The Blueprint, did to take Colorado, and we hear this from Ted Trimpo when he talks to us about how it all happened. They got motivated. To them, it was every last penny. They will fight to take Colorado from the grips of the evangelicals, which at one point, Colorado Springs was like the evangelical center of the universe with all of its ministries there. So this was all done by intent. This was not by accident. You had a number of very wealthy people that feel very passionately about the LGBTQ movement that invested a ton of money and turned the state a different direction. And now you have Jared Polis, one of those four, as the governor of the state. You've had law after law after law passed in favor of the LGBTQ movement. And my question to everybody is it less tolerant now than it was before? And I think the sheer number of lawsuits is example number one of how intolerant this state has become under LGBTQ leadership. Your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, the thing for me is that I think that we can make a case that through certain lenses and filters, Colorado has always been intolerant. We can go back to Amendment 2 and that we weren't going to give gay people special rights. That would be viewed as incredibly intolerant right now. So for me, this is some of the difficulty I have inside of the conversation is because what I hear on both sides are people arguing for tolerance while being intolerant. That's what I hear. I hear on the LGBTQ side, you need to tolerate this and my choices and everything else, but I'm not going to tolerate you disagreeing with me. And I hear it on the other side, the conservative side and the religious side saying, you need to tolerate my religious beliefs, but I'm not going to tolerate you identifying that way or telling me that I should talk to you this way. I don't tolerate that. So I have a problem in the discussion of tolerance when I hear both sides expressing intolerance. And I think that's where this is never going to be solved. And it's exactly like our last guest, senior counsel with Alliance Defending Freedom, Hal Frampton, joins us when he talks about the Christian bookstore not being able to outline their policies because that becomes a violation of a law. They haven't done the bad thing. They haven't purposefully, with malice, identified somebody else as the wrong gender or the wrong name because they disagree with it. They haven't done the thing we're mad about. They've just put together policies. And again, anybody that is rational and reasonable can realize that they don't check. That's why I asked Hal. I'm like, how do they check? They don't know. So unless you go in and announce it, it doesn't necessarily matter. So as long as you are tolerant of their beliefs and you walk in there and you present yourself this way and you say, hi, I'm such and such name, etc., they'll deal with you as that person. But as soon as you identify yourself as I am trans so-and-so or I'm this, then their policies kick in. That's an issue. Again, it's the intolerance of the individual walking in to allow them to hold their beliefs and the intolerance of the other side of the community to allow the other person to exist the way they want to. Well, so it's an intolerance debate about tolerance.
I think there's always going to be intolerance. There's always going to be societies that go, we're not going to tolerate this type of behavior.
Yeah.
Okay? And we got to get to a break. But here's the question I have. Which type of society is more intolerant? The society that's led by LGBTQ people, as our state currently is, or a society that's led by evangelicals, Catholics, those types of things? Which society in itself is more intolerant if tolerance is something that you appreciate? All right, give us a phone call, 303-696-1971, or text us at 720-819-5115. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710 KNUS. just let this play.
This is my life tonight.
Yeah.
I go into ranch mode and just disappear for the next 48 hours.
I love seeing
spend
Jeff's
time with my animals.
Pictures sometimes over the weekend because it's all ranch Jeff. It's really cool. It is really neat to see.
Lots of text messages on this issue. 3377 pointing out like how many trans people go to Christian bookstores. Yeah. Also, how many businesses do people enter and they're even addressed by pronouns?
Exactly. And even then does it really necessarily matter? And okay, here's the thing, okay? Everybody in our audience is going to have this experience. There's a time in your life when you're in a business and the person that is helping you turns to you and goes, I'll look into that for you, sir. Or the worst one, I'll look into that for you, ma'am. Like, God damn it. I've not become dude. I'm not buddy. I'm no longer a peer. They see me as an old person. And everybody has that in their life where you've become the sir or the ma'am to the person that's helping you in the store because they think you're older. And you're like, damn it. Happens all the time.
And I guess now you can drag somebody before the Colorado Civil Rights Commission.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my gosh, so many other text messages on this. And if you want to debate Billy, do it on the text message line because he's jumping in there. 720-819-5115. 720-819-5115. All right, our friends over at Colorado Public Radio having a rougher day today. We'll talk about that next. You're listening to Jeff and Bill.
This is KNUS.